Go to whirlwindgolf.com and join Whirlwind Plus. You get the lowest rate that day for any tee time that you choose. And now in the month of December, every member of your foursome can play at your rate if they join you Monday through Thursday and bring a non-perishable food item to donate to the food bank. Go to whirlwindgolf.com and feel the wind.
Thanks for listening, Unplugged Army. I'm Louis Unga, General Manager at Whirlwind Golf Club at Wild Horse Pass. We're proud to present Doug Franz Unplugged.
Form an offense.
Form an offense.
4 minutes.
Form an offense. Form an offense.
Everything you need to know in sports that affects Maricopa County, the state of Arizona, and the world, you get in 4 minutes. We start things off in Louisville, Kentucky. I don't have a cool volleyball sounder, but the ASU volleyball team was the only team locally in action last night. Sun Devils' hopes for a championship made it to the Sweet 16, and it ended there. Creighton won 3-1 against the Devils. Arizona State's season ends with a 28-4 record. Since we started with ASU, we'll just go by schools for the rest of the way. Devils football, they take on Duke in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. But head coach Kenny Dillingham has done something strange for today, which yesterday was tomorrow.
No practice tomorrow. Just so everybody's aware, we've gone 3 days in a row, and our numbers are fairly low. So give it a day off, come back on Saturday.
Kickoff in El Paso coming up December 31st. In hoops, the Sun Devils go first tomorrow. They take on Santa Clara in a neutral site game in Henderson, Nevada. Tip-off tomorrow evening at 5. GCU's up next. They're at home on the west side tomorrow night against Coastal Carolina. Tip-off at 6 o'clock. And then it's the marquee matchup in all of college basketball for Saturday, notwithstanding, of course, the Ohio State Bonaventure game. Number 1 UofA takes on number 12 Bama, not in Tuscaloosa, however. The game's in Birmingham. Head coach Tommy Lloyd, how do you feel about playing a team that sometimes shoots 53-pointers?
Obviously, they're comfortable shooting a lot of threes. Nate's done a great job at Alabama. I mean, they have a real identity and a real conviction to how they play. And if you have an identity and a conviction and it's well coached, you can almost win any way. Obviously, we know it's a great challenge for us, and we've got to do a good job defending the three-point line, but usually when the three-point line, you also get hurt by layups.
Who is Nate? That's Bama head coach Nate Odom, who used to be the assistant to Bobby Hurley at Buffalo. Tip-off tomorrow night, 7:30. Then Sunday afternoon, it's time for the Cardinals. They're on the road at Houston. What does the Texans offense bring to the table? Let's ask safety Buda Baker.
Great quarterback, does a great job of getting into his drops, getting the ball out, boot game as well. Nico's, every single year, I think he's having a 1,000-yard season, so a guy who gets the rock, who can make all the yak catches, and they throw it deep, they throw it intermediate, quick game, just all-around receiver in that guy, and, they're playing great this year.
Kickoff in Texas, Sunday morning at 11. Then it's time for the Suns. They're in action on Sunday night. Last night, the Valley Suns beat the San Diego Clippers, and come on Malawatch, 22 points and 19 boards. Are you kidding? It's Suns and Lakers on Sunday night downtown. Devin Booker expected to go through full game day preparation, but no word if he actually plays. Tip-off Sunday night at 6. The Rattlers have signed the 2025 MVP Max Mailer to play quarterback in 2026. According to Richard Ober to the Arizona Republic, the MVP hit day one of free agency and texted Rattlers head coach Kevin Guy saying, "Let's go." And if you've ever wondered what it sounds like to be up by 14 with 9 minutes left in an NFL game and lose, it sounds like this.
It's inexcusable. You don't make excuses. You got to care enough.
While Todd's talking, I'll tell you about the game. Kirk Cousins lit them up, 30 of 44 for 373 yards and 3 touchdown passes, no picks. The last 2 possessions for the Bucs were an interception in only 4 plays, and then 1 first down, a negative 4-yard run, and a sack before a punt at the 2-minute warning. The Falcons also came out of a 3rd and 28 hole with a 14-yard pass and then a 21-yard pass on 4th down. And that's why Todd sounded like that.
It's your livelihood.
And finally, meet Andrew McKay of the Northern Territory in Australia. He invited his fiancée out to dinner, but when they arrived at the restaurant, he then canceled the date and turned around because of a home invasion. He saw on his phone that his home was being invaded by his farm animals. His video shows his 2 pet dogs actually using their noses and sliding open the back door sliding glass door. Well, then his prize steer stuck his nose in the door and opened it all the way and walked right in. Well, then his horse was wondering what was going on, and the horse went in. He said the steer continually knocked things off of shelves and there was broken glass everywhere. The horse found a bowl of vegetable scraps that was supposed to go to the chickens, and he ate that and threw the rest of it all around the room. He said, luckily, all the pets are safe. At least he thinks so. The reason why he's not sure is because he has a fish tank, and most of the animals drank out of the fish tank, and he's not really sure how many fish were in there before. But he thinks all of them are accounted for, even though they had to swim in a lot less water for a while.
Hello, this is General Tom. I love Bell's Nashville Kitchen because they support Doug Franz. They were the original sponsor, and I relish the podcast that I give each day almost as much as their fries.
Bell's Nashville Kitchen on Main Street in Old Town Scottsdale.
You found home, down home.
Okay, I'm doing the unthinkable because I'm in a huge hurry. A Mountain Ember Ale. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hooray, beer!
I know it's sacrilegious for me to drink it straight out of the can. I never do that. It's heathenistic. Get a glass. But I had to. I'm in a hurry because I got the big lunch coming up at noon. And oh, by the way, weirdest thing in the world happened yesterday. Jennifer opens up the Christmas cards and says, oh, these turned out great. And I look at them. There's 5 people on it. What? Good morning. Good afternoon, good evening. Whatever it is that you've decided to make Doug Franz Unplugged a part of your day, my family greatly appreciates it. My name is Doug Franz, and you have found the only podcast in the world totally devoted to the coverage of the 4 major sports franchises of one great American city that drops on your phone each and every weekday morning. We also cover ASU, UofA, GCU, the Rattlers, the Rising, and the Merc. This is Doug Franz Unplugged, presented by Whirlwind Golf Club at Wild Horse Pass. How are you? Well, since it's a Beer Friday, thanks to 100 Mile Brewing Company in Tempe at the 202, the Rural, and Scottsdale Road, you better be in a great mood. Come on, let's go. And it's game-changing lunch day. Game-changing lunch. Although the lunch is not at Bell's Nashville Kitchen, and it is not at 100 Mile Brewing Company. As the person I'm eating lunch with, I give you a list of cities. I say, here are the cities that have a restaurant that's either a sponsor or has been very good to me over the years. And then you choose the city, I choose the place. So the lunch today, noon, here we go, big time. It's already 4:44 in the morning, though, so I'm a little nervous. I was hoping to get to bed by 5, and I'm just starting the show. But I do have 4-minute offense done, and I do have breakdown done, but I don't have Howard Balzer yet edited. So I got to hurry up and get that edited and get going. That's why I said I don't have time to go get a glass. I just grabbed the beer. Here we go. Yes, I'm having a beer at 4:44 in the morning. I had one at dinner, and I meant to record me drinking at A Mountain at dinner, and I forgot. And that stinks, because then I could have already had that done, and it is kind of weird, I admit, drinking a beer at 4:45 in the morning. Still tastes great, though. You know, I mean, hey, fresh. It never gets old. So that's why I'm really in a great mood. Even though yesterday, really strange day. Really strange day. It started off with a great meeting with Angie from Penny Royal Promotions. So we are going to be provided with 15, for the first time, 15 Doug Franz Unplugged t-shirts. So what I'm going to do is, if you've never been to the Unplugged Army holiday event, what we do is every 15, 20 minutes or so, it just depends on how many prizes we have, we figure out how many prizes we have versus the time from 3 to 10. And we start pulling raffle tickets every time we have a prize. So that wasn't a good explanation. So I'm going to make up a number. Let's say we have 7 prizes. Well, if we have 7 prizes, then once an hour, we're going to pull a raffle ticket. And whoever's there is win. Must be present to win. And we just pull until there's a winner. And then there we go. Now we're going to have a lot more than 7. But we will have 15 Unplugged Army t-shirts that will be wrapped up. You won't know what they are. You just go grab a present. And you might be a winner. We will have 5 $20 gift cards to Bell's Nashville Kitchen. So that's kind of cool. I consider a $20 gift card like a buy one meal, get one free. Because, meals nowadays cost anywhere between $15, $20, $25. Well, now you use this card and you're paying for somebody else's meal. But there's a little bit of an honor system. The cards won't be activated for that day because that's kind of cheesy because the waitress is right there expecting the bill to be X. And then all of a sudden you say, oh, look, I got a Bell's card. So you come back and enjoy it. And Bell's is so good, you'll be happy going back. So we'll have that. I haven't reached out to Angel yet of Burrito Express, and I haven't reached out yet to Sweet Lou at Whirlwind Golf Club at Wild Horse Pass, so we'll get something from them. A.G. Kleino from Goodyear Fit Body Boot Camp has already given us a free 4-week membership. That's kind of awesome. So we'll have that as well, and then I'll keep scavenging up prizes to give away. So I'm excited about that, and I'm really excited about the t-shirt. So everything went great with Angie. So we got that. Then I contacted a friend and said, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Let's get together. And they said, oh my gosh, I forgot to get in touch with you. And this friend told me about her mother, which is another friend of ours that's going through a very difficult time. It's not my place to say it, but she's not feeling well. It's not mental, it's physical. And it was just crushing. It was just crushing. But her spirit about her faith, her belief her mom's going to make it through, but just her faith was so awesome and so gorgeous. And then she gave me an incredible compliment about my character that I admit when I hung up, it brought me to tears. And I don't know. I don't want to take somebody else's tragedy and flip it into a personal positive, but it just made me so happy that Jennifer's healthy. That's how I looked at it. I immediately thought, man, it's really awesome that my wife is here. And it just, gosh, it reinvigorated me there with Jennifer. So I had those emotions. Then I start working, and all of a sudden, as I'm working upstairs, the garage door comes up. Like, what in the world's going on here? Jennifer's singing at one of her concerts last night. Why is the garage door going up? My daughter walks in, and she says, I was in the neighborhood, and I thought I'd come over and say hi. And that was it. Just wanted to say hi to her dad. And I thought immediately, well, how many dads don't get that thrill of having their 25-year-old daughter want to come in and say hi? And then I gave her a credit card and I said, go get us a bucket of chicken. So I've told you before, my favorite, I like Culver's pretty good. Wendy's is my number one fast food place. I love Popeyes, but we don't have a Wendy's right next to my house, and we have a KFC. So I said, go get us a bucket of chicken. So she got us a bucket of chicken, and we just sat and watched Thursday Night Football and ate chicken together. And it was awesome. It was just so awesome. Then when she left, I got a text, and it would be horribly rude for me to tell you who it was from. But I have a very strong suspicion you know the person. And it was a show idea from a person I would never ever, and I mean an unplugged idea, from a person I would never guess would give me an idea. And it's kind of one of those moments where you go, hey, we're starting to make some noise here. You know what I've always told you, if we come together, we can lift this thing, we can create something here that no one's ever thought of. It's kind of one of those people where you go, okay, what's starting to happen here? What's starting to happen here? And then I started thinking about my lunch today. So for me to get that text yesterday with a show idea leading into this on a day where I found out a friend has a sickness, this is like yesterday was one of those God days. You know, it was just one of those days where everything comes together, and I realize I need to move from wanting more to striving for more. Can you feel the difference in that phrasing? I have been wanting Unplugged to explode. I want more, and sometimes it's been driving me into the ground. But yesterday was one of those days where I feel like, okay, I got to strive for more. Okay? I mean, you don't put your talents in the ground and then just leave them sit, right? You want to invest and do more so you can help more. But at the same time, you want it for other people, not just want because you don't feel like you have enough. And I have not sat back and appreciated enough what you and I have accomplished. We are in year 4 of this thing. And I wanted so much to happen so much faster that I started to put the cart before the horse, or I started, maybe not put the cart before the horse. I started to get frustrated that the horse wasn't going faster. The horse kept going up the mountain, and I was like, no, I want to be at the top of the mountain now. And that's not how it works. Be happy that the horse is still pulling something. You know, the cart's getting heavier, but the horse is still pulling. Be happy. Strive for more. Strive for the horse to keep going. Strive for those things. But don't want them to the point where you're putting other things in front that don't need to be there. I was doing that. And yesterday was one of those days where everything got recentered. Right before this meeting today. Let's go. You know, I have no idea what's going on in your life. But no matter where you are you putting too much crap in front of you? I'm the type of person, and this is kind of an ego-less thing to do. So I'm proud of it, but I went too far. I don't look back necessarily. Whatever I've accomplished, I've already accomplished it. I'm not going to sit here and pat myself on the back because whatever I've done is leading to the thing I now need to do. So I'm already focused on what I now need to do. And 90% of the time that's good. But what I realized I was doing is I lost appreciation for what we have done together already. You can look so far ahead that you don't take a minute and say, well, that was awesome, what you just drove by. And you end up driving over things. You know, don't hit the speed bump too fast. Just go over it and keep going. That's not Doug's big one, but that's how I feel. So I'm just in a great place right now. And hopefully my attitude can spill into your life and you can realize that you're headed on the right path. And if you're not, well, then let's get started on the right path. There's nothing holding you back from the right path. You can start today or restart today if you kind of fell off of it. All right. Time for Doug's big one. It's my number one opinion of the day. Let's roll.
Doug.
Doug, where's Doug? Here, sorry, Doug. Where are you at?
Yeah, was that a plug to unplug right there? That was smooth.
Well, I can only answer the questions that get asked of me, Doug.
Obviously, Franz is such a good player.
Doug's big one.
I just have to laugh. You think that the media, with all the supposed sources, are always going to be like either right or on top of things or blah, 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 blah. And everywhere you look, first of all, this Michigan thing is crazy, right? I mean, this Michigan thing is absolutely insane with what's happened. If you haven't read, again, I guess I got to set up Doug's big one before I give it to you. But Coach Moore in custody, expected to be in court today. According to a lot of people that I've read, and specifically at Scott Hughes CBB, who is a Michigan insider and reporter and blah, blah, blah. The story as it's being told is Michigan officials thought there could be an inappropriate relationship between Coach Moore and a young woman who was not only on staff, but was the main assistant to him. Not like maybe a secretary, but much more of a kind of administrative person who does a lot of things side by side with Coach. And they developed a personal, a relationship, otherwise known as an affair. I don't want to say that because I don't know the facts, but that's what Michigan is firing him for, is having an affair with this woman, basically. And no, you don't. I mean, in today's day and age, sadly, you don't get fired for an affair, but you get fired when you have a staffer who is under your purview. And I don't know what that word means. And then you start a relationship with her that beyond professional. So supposedly they had been investigated and had denied it. And come Wednesday morning, she changed her story. And once she changed her story and said, yes, they were, that's all Michigan needed. Boom, they fire him. Okay. That's what some people are reporting. I want to make sure that you know I'm not reporting that. Okay. So if you talk to somebody else about it, tell them, well, here's what is being reported, but it's still pretty shaky. You technically, maybe I shouldn't even be going down this road, but by saying what's shaky, but from some of the tweets that I've seen, you can laugh and say, well, Doug, don't believe Twitter, but I'm not looking at just Joe Blow. I'm looking at people with check marks. I'm looking at people that I've seen report on many other things when it comes to Michigan sports. So then what happened is after he was let go, he got into an argument with his wife, threatened to kill himself, then broke into the young staffer's apartment and made all kinds of wild threats. I don't want to go into what I've read there because those are where it gets a little shaky. And then he left, but his wife was able to track his cell phone. Police picked him up. So that's what's going on with Michigan. Okay, so now that you know that, Michigan needs a head coach. And the amount of people, like there's a guy named, you probably know him, there's a guy named David Portnoy. Dave Portnoy started Barstool, sold it for a lot of money, and then Barstool, the new ownership, ran it into the ground, and then eventually he actually bought it back for quarters on the dollar, so he made a ton of money and lifted it back up, but he's a huge Michigan honk. He has put out his wish list on saying, here are the guys that it's going to be. Well, in my opinion, his 10-man wish list, he's 0 for 10. That's not who's going to get hired. Now it's taken over where the name Kenny is actually trending in America because the amount of Michigan fans that want Kenny Dillingham, and it's all over the place. I mean, all over the place, that it's going to be Kenny Dillingham as the head coach of Michigan. I have to laugh at this. I mean, I actually have to laugh at this. Kenny Dillingham is not going to Michigan. Now, this is one of those famous quotes, famous statements that when you say something and then it's not going to happen and then it happens, man, people go crazy. And it's funny, and I deserve it if I'm wrong, okay? I totally deserve it if I'm wrong. Kenny Dillingham is not going to Michigan. There's a woman by the name of Mary Cabot who covers the Cleveland Browns. This woman has been covering the Cleveland Browns. I think I was in college when she started. I don't remember the last time she was wrong. This woman, when she puts stuff out, she's right. Right? She is right. She is saying there is strong interest from Michigan that Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns, is their target, or is a target, I should say. Well, I got to tell you, that woman says it. I don't think it gets to her unless it's looking really good. Because think about this. Who would the source be? She's so deeply embedded into the Browns that the source would either be Tommy Rees or someone Tommy Rees has told within the Browns to tell her, and that person told her. It could be an assistant coach that's going with Tommy Rees to Michigan, or it could be another assistant coach because Tommy Rees was up front, told the head coach, Kevin Stefanski, and said, hey, I'm in deep talks with Michigan. Here's where it stands right now, knowing he's still got a season to finish, and maybe he's an up-and-up dude. But you've got to start planning who are you bringing with you now. It's part of the interview process. Who are you going to hire here? I mean, everybody, they talk about everybody. Who's going to be your OC? Who's going to be your DC? It's part of the interview because they want to know what kind of staff you can get together. I mean, they'll even ask you down to strength and conditioning coaches. And you've got to put that together. So everywhere I read, except one place, Kenny Dillingham. This woman who's not covering Michigan, who's covering the Browns, say, oh, no, it's the offensive coordinator. Tommy Rees used to play a quarterback at Notre Dame and coached at Notre Dame a little bit, and he's bounced around, but almost always moving up the ladder. I have no doubt in my mind. Again, this is Doug's big one. It is my opinion. I am not reporting. Tommy Rees is the next head coach of Michigan. And everywhere you read that it's going to be Kenny Dillingham, just laugh. Just laugh and say, well, if somebody says, I've heard it's Kenny Dillingham, say, you know what? I'm in the Unplugged Army, and I've heard it's not Kenny Dillingham. I've heard it's going to be Tommy Rees. And that, the person can go, who is Tommy Rees? Say, well, don't worry about who Tommy Rees is. Just know it's not Kenny Dillingham. This is our job to mobilize as the Unplugged Army and squash Kenny Dillingham to Michigan, right? Squash it. Now, that's the end of Doug's big one. Kenny, can we talk? You know how dumb I'm going to look if you take the Michigan job? Can you send me a text? Remember when you used to drive to work in Eugene and listen to the 4-minute offense and you would feel like you were at home? Remember all those times I got you through that rough and tumble 9-minute commute you had to Oregon? Can you pay me back with a text that says, I'm not going to Michigan? Just so we're good. I would like that. And that's Doug's big one. Santan Ford, 202 in Val Vista. Why am I Santan Ford? Because the mobile unit will change your oil as long as you're within 25 miles of the Santan Ford dealership. And boy, is that easy. You can be getting lunch. You could be watching your kids practice. You can be doing whatever you've got to do. And they're changing your oil for you. Makes life so much easier. And then the deals. You not only get a friends and family rate as a member of the Unplugged Army if you email me, Doug at DougFranzUnplugged.com, but I'll also buy you dinner if you buy you dinner, lunch. I'll buy you lunch if you buy a car at Trophy. You don't buy the car at Trophy. You buy it at Santan Ford, and then I take you to lunch at Trophy. And on top of that, right now, the year-end sale, 0% financing for 60 months, $0 down, and 0 payments to start off the deal. Now, in order to make sure that you understand it, please see the dealer for details because this is amazing. You're not paying on the car for 3 months. Go now. Santan Ford, 202 in Val Vista. I am Santan Ford.
The rules of inclusion into breakdown are as follows. Number 1.
Any game with an FBS program from Arizona.
Or, number 2.
Any ranked Big 12 program.
Or, number 3.
Any game with 2 top 25 teams.
Or, number 4.
Any game involving a team in the NFC West.
Or, number 5.
Any NFL game when both teams have a winning record.
Each breakdown will have 3 elements.
1 person or matchup that will be the focus of
the stare down.
1 interesting stat to be used by you while drinking a beer to impress a friend.
Beer stat.
And 1 player Doug is watching to prepare for the 2026 NFL Draft in April.
Draft Watch. If your game meets one of the 5 criteria, then your game will be highlighted in sequential order based on kickoff time in this week's college and NFL football breakdown.
Break it all down. Breakdown.
The United States Military Academy Black Knights, who are 6-5. At the United States Naval Academy Midshipmen, who are 9-2. M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, Maryland, tomorrow afternoon at 1. Cloudy skies and 40 degrees at kickoff. CBS 5. The over-under is 38.5. Navy is favored by 6.
Neither team is ranked, and I don't care, because this game will always fit the criteria, no matter what the criteria is. God bless the young men and women of Army and Navy.
The Stare Down.
I'm going to stare down the College Football Playoff Committee for a second. You notice I said Navy is not ranked. Well, they're not ranked in the College Football Playoff. In the AP poll, the midshipmen are ranked number 22. See, the AP has it right. They don't have Iowa ranked, but Iowa is ranked in the College Football Playoff. Let's go over the resume. Iowa's conference wins are against 5-7 Rutgers, 4-8 Wisconsin, 6-6 Penn State, 7-5 Minnesota, 4-8 Michigan State, and 7-5 Nebraska. Iowa went 0-4 against any ranked team they actually played. Navy went 1-1. Thank you, Associated Press. Something I've never said.
Your stat?
17, 1, and 133. Gary Danielson is a fantastic color analyst. This is his 17th Army-Navy game. He's retiring after the season. As of right now, no broadcaster has ever done more Army-Navy games. The 1-133 is a strange combo of Army being the least penalized team in the country. They only get hit with 23 yards in penalties per game, while Navy is one of the worst teams at a strange stat, drawing penalties on the other team. Navy only picks up 31 yards per game via opponent's flags. So with so few penalties and the clock running because of so few incomplete passes, this game might end in about 2 hours.
Draft Watch.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to admit, I haven't watched any, even a minute of any Army games this year. And I've watched, I think, the first quarter and a half of the Notre Dame Navy game. So I am not an expert on either team. But when I did watch Navy, one player popped, defensive tackle Landon Robinson. He's probably too small for the NFL at 6 foot, 287 pounds as a defensive tackle. But if he can gain some good weight, I would invite him to my camp. I'm not going to draft him, but service members always seem to make the people around them better. So if I can have him in camp and you see his desperation, maybe I'm going to get more out of other players. Sorry, Landon. You would need to, throw some cadets out of the club before I'm ready to draft you. But I'll be watching.
The second place Buffalo Bills, who are 9-4. At the first place, New England Patriots, who are 11-2. Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, Sunday morning at 11. Cloudy skies and 32 degrees at kickoff with lows in the teens. CBS 5. The over-under is 50.5. Buffalo has to cover 1.5.
Let this hang for a second after you heard the high-priced voice talent say the Patriots are 11-2. New England lost to the Raiders this year. New England started the season 1-2. Then they've won 10 straight since. The MVP is clearly a two-horse race between Drake May, quarterback of the Patriots, and Rams QB Matthew Stafford. Irrelevant of who wins, here's what Patriot fans should know. May is completing passes at a 5% higher clip in his second year than he did last year in his rookie year. Despite having 4 games left, he's already thrown for 1,200 more yards than last year, 8 more touchdowns than his rookie year, and he should end up under last year's interception total of 10. He sits now at 6. He was, decent last year, but that is incredible improvement.
The Stare Down.
Stephon Diggs is the easy one, the wide receiver that was with the Bills, kind of forced his way onto Buffalo and then forced his way out of Buffalo, and now he's in New England. But my stare down is Amy Adams Strunk. You know who that is? That's the Tennessee Titans owner who fired Mike Vrabel. after Vrabel went 54-45, 9 games over 500 over 6 years, and took the Titans to the playoffs 3 times. The Titans had the worst record in football last year without Mike Vrabel, and now they're projected to draft number 3 overall in the next draft because they are the 3rd worst team this year. And the Patriots might end up as the 1 seed in the AFC. Good move, Amy.
Your stat?
5-32. Very strange, but the Patriots defense is the worst in football in the red zone. 73% of all opponent possessions result in a touchdown, so that is where you get the number 32 from. However, New England allows the 5th fewest points at only 18.5 points per game. What does that mean? That means they just don't let you into the red zone because once you get there, you always score. Now, with Buffalo's offense ranked 1st in yards per rush attempt and 3rd in yards per pass attempt, the only key here is keeping the turnovers down, and there's going to be a lot of points scored by Buffalo if they get into the red zone.
The last place, Arizona Cardinals, who are 3-10. At the second place, Houston Texans, who are 8-5, indoors at NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas, Sunday morning at 11. Fox 10. The over-under is 42.5. Arizona is a 9.5-point dog.
This game is a huge fight. You see, both teams are fighting for something big. The Texans, they're 1 game behind the Jaguars for the division lead. However, they're currently in the final spot of the playoffs because they own the tiebreaker against Indianapolis. But there's still only 1 game remaining between the 2 teams that could even out that head-to-head portion of the tiebreaker. So they're a sliver away from possibly being a 1 team and a smaller sliver away of not making the playoffs at all. So every game is vital for Houston in the extremely tight AFC playoff race. For Arizona, they're in a massive fight too. Every coach and almost every player is fighting for their job.
The stare down.
You've probably heard enough about it this week. This is an incredible defense. Houston's got the number 1 defense, blah, 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 blah. So therefore, I think we should stare down Nick Rawlis. You see, the Cardinals defensive coordinator is going to have to keep this thing close because it's not like the Cardinals offense is going to tear up Houston's defense. Granted, injuries are an important part of the story for Arizona, but Rawlis came into the season as a dark horse head coaching candidate. Now look, the Cardinals come in ranked 26th in giving up points, 27th in fourth quarter points, 24th in total defense, with an abysmal 27th ranking in quarterback sack percentage. So I'm putting the pressure on Nick Rawlis because I kind of assume the Cardinals offense is going to struggle. Offensive coordinator Drew Petzing, what do you see from that top-ranked Houston defense?
Honestly, it's not a ton that is unique. They have an elite roster, and I think it's really well coached. I mean, really at all 3 levels, they have premium players. They play extremely hard. They're very disciplined in their system. I think D'Amico and Matt Burke are 2 as good coaches as there are in this league from an effort and execution standpoint. I think it shows up in the way that they play and the way that they execute and in the numbers they produced so far this year. So it's a great challenge, but I think one that our guys are really excited to go put it on display and go see what we can do.
I don't really know how excited I am to see what you can do.
Your stat?
A couple of them, 5-16-2 and 1,000. Trey freaking McBride has been amazing. It's hard to say this, but give Steve Keim the credit because this guy has been great, and it was Keim that brought him in. The 5 is for a tight end getting 5 catches in 1 game. No tight end has ever had 5 receptions in every game for 16 straight games. Right now, McBride is sitting at 15 straight, so he's going to set that record. When you consider this team is on their 4th string running back, 2nd string quarterback, their supposed number 1 wide receiver is in and out of the lineup with 80% of their starting offensive line on the shelf. Yet this guy is only 63 yards away from his second 1,000-yard season. It's crazy to say this already, but these are the kind of numbers you hear about when someone makes the presentation during the Hall of Fame induction speeches.
the first place Green Bay Packers, who are 9-3. At the first place Denver Broncos, who are 11-2. Empower Field at Mile High in Denver, Colorado. Sunday afternoon at 2:25. Mostly sunny skies and 55 degrees at kickoff. CBS 5. The over-under is 43.5. Green Bay is a 2.5-point favorite.
The 2025 Denver Broncos will be the ultimate I told you so team. Problem is, no one knows who's going to be the one doing the telling. What does that mean? Denver had a record 9-game comeback streak that was only broken last week because, well, they played the Raiders, and the Raiders are so bad that the Broncos never trail. What I mean by an I told you so team is so many games are close. Everyone wants to say the Broncos are overrated, and they're about to have a reality check when they get into the postseason. However, what do the Broncos players think? They think, hey, screw all of you, we're 11-2. So when they win in the postseason, they're going to claim, I told you we were good, and you didn't want to listen. At one point, this team won 4 straight by a field goal or less. And even their 2 losses in that 11-2 record were a walk-off variety to the Chargers and the Colts, putting their record at 1-2 before, just like the Patriots, starting their own 10-game winning streak.
The stare down.
The Packers' offensive line. The 1984 Chicago Bears, the year before the famous Super Bowl team, they hold the record for the most sacks in a season. Right now, the Broncos are on pace to pass it. Plus, not only do you have to worry about that pass rush, Patrick Surtain seems to be able to just shut down one half of the field. He has earned the right to be called a true shutdown corner. So this defense is great anywhere, but they're incredible in Denver. The game plan will be vitally important to get the ball out and hit Denver with some timely screens. Also, look for Packers quarterback Jordan Love to attempt a few quarterback draws just to make sure those pass rushers have something to keep an eye out for instead of just coming back to sack him.
Your stat?
Plus 2.5. You heard the high-priced voice talent saying that Green Bay is a 2.5-point favorite. Well, that means Denver, the home team, is a 2.5-point underdog when they've won 11 straight games at home. That goes back to the middle of last year, yet they're a 2.5-point dog. Here's what's crazy. I agree with Vegas.
The third place Detroit Lions, who are 8-5. At the first place, Los Angeles Rams, who are 10-3. Indoors at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. Sunday afternoon at 2:25. Fox 10. The over-under is 55.5. LA has to cover 4.5.
There's never been another trade like it in NFL history. The two teams trading their starting quarterbacks, and yet both teams got better and won the trade. One team wins the Super Bowl and the other team becomes a playoff fixture. Now Jared Goff, the one traded from the Rams to the Lions, comes to LA to play his former team. It doesn't really feel like his former team anymore because it's been so long ago since the trade, and his new team has been led to heights they've never achieved in the Super Bowl era. He'll also be bringing with him Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamison Williams. Why does that matter? They're two players the Lions drafted with Rams draft picks. Meanwhile, Matthew Stafford, well, he has a Super Bowl ring, and he's trending to win his first MVP.
The stare down.
I'm sure they don't like hearing this, but I'm going to stare down the Lions training staff. Have you seen Detroit's secondary? Cornerback Terrion Arnold, he's been placed on IR. Safety Brian Branch, well, he tore his ACL. The other safety, All-Pro Kirby Joseph, well, he's out for 2 months with a knee injury. Now, you move Thomas Harper up to first string to replace one of the safeties, and he's out with a concussion.
Your stat?
1. And I'm not just talking about the only trade where we've seen 2 starting quarterbacks traded for each other and both teams benefit. The 1 is the first quarter is going to be really interesting. The Lions are the only team in the league averaging 30 points a game, so they're number 1 in total scoring offense. However, it's the Rams who are number 1 in first quarter scoring. And since both teams seem to score at will, the first quarter defenses are going to be important, and that's where things flip. The Rams, they're in the top 5 in defense in the first quarter, while Detroit is 26th. Another reason to pick the Rams in this game is the red zone. Both red zone offenses are fantastic. Tied for third best in the league. Yes, both of them tied together. Third best in the league. They score a touchdown on 67% of their red zone possessions. The catch is the defenses again. LA only lets their opponent score a touchdown on 42.5% of all possessions inside the 20. That's second best in the league, only to the Broncos. However, the Detroit Lions defense is 23rd in red zone defense, and that won't be good enough to stop the Rams.
The last place Tennessee Titans, who are 2-11. At the third place, San Francisco 49ers, who are 9-4. Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California. Sunday afternoon at 2:25. Sunny skies and 64 degrees. Sunday ticket. The over-under is 44.5. 49ers are a 12.5-point favorite.
I have Sunday ticket. And this is one of those games that I'll turn on if I notice a score and it's actually close and I think there's going to be an upset, but I'll wait till the fourth quarter to even check. In other words, I really won't be paying attention to this game at all. By the way, speaking of the Titans, did they really win in Glendale? Like, how did that happen?
The stare down.
Well, since it's the Titans, this is probably the last time I'm ever going to be able to talk about them during breakdown. So let's just stare down Amy Adams Strunk, the owner, again. Just because. And by the way, before you ask, yes, I do think she's one of the owners in the NFL worse than Michael Bidwell.
Your stat?
3. A philosophical question for you. Can you have a one-game streak? I say no. To have a streak, there's got to be a stack of 1 and then on top of 1. So if you agree with me that you got to have at least 2 to have a streak, the Titans haven't had a winning streak since November of 2022. That was 3 years ago. They beat the Browns last week. They've got a chance again to actually get a winning streak. But they won't.
The second place Indianapolis Colts, who are 8-5. At the second place, Seattle Seahawks, who are 10-3. Lumen Field in Seattle, Washington. Sunday afternoon at 2:25. Light rain and 55 degrees. Sunday ticket. The over-under is 42.5. Seattle has to cover 3.5.
Who in their right mind would come out of a 5-year retirement and play his first game at Lumen Field, one of the loudest stadiums in NFL history? Well, that would be Phillip Rivers. Meanwhile, don't forget Seattle is in a brutal battle for the top seed in the NFC playoffs. So while everybody's talking about Phillip Rivers, and yes, I'm one of everybody because I'm completely fascinated by this game, in a conference so tight, the first round bye might be the difference in who goes to the Super Bowl. So this game is huge for the Seahawks, while the Indianapolis Colts are tied for the 7th spot in the playoffs. That's the last spot. The problem is, as of right now, they lose the tiebreaker. This game is huge. Oh, by the way, keep in mind, you have to win your division to even get a top 4 seed. Right now, Seattle, they're tied for the best record in the NFC, yet they're the 5 seed.
The stare down.
Oh, it's the Colts offensive line. Even though they're a good line, oh my gosh, has there ever been more pressure on any position group in the history of football? I'm totally serious. Why? They're going to be protecting a 44-year-old grandpa. Now, yes, it's true. We don't know for sure if Phillip Rivers is really going to play. But come on. Oh, by the way, you're also hoping to find a crack in the 4th best rushing defense in the league. There's no way Phillip Rivers would have come back and tried this. He didn't think Jonathan Taylor would be fantastic. He wants to be handing the ball off. He needs Jonathan Taylor to create, so therefore play action can hurt the opponent. Well, that run game has rarely hurt the Seahawks defense.
Your stat?
2. If Phillip Rivers takes a snap, he will join Brett Favre as the only grandfathers to ever play in the NFL. Phillip and Tiffany Rivers were still students at NC State. They were actually high school sweethearts. She went to NC State because that was the highest ranked school that would recruit him as a quarterback. Most schools in the SEC were actually recruiting Phillip Rivers as a safety. I know that's hard for a lot of people to believe. Well, they had their daughter Hallie while they were students at NC State. Hallie's son is now Philip's first grandchild. But here's what's strange. Hallie's son is only 18 months younger than Hallie's brother. You see, Philip and Tiffany just had their 10th child recently, over 20 years after they had Hallie, which means if Hallie's son and Philip and Tiffany's youngest son, Andrew, both go to high school together, Uncle Andrew could be throwing passes in a varsity game to his nephew. And if they do it at the high school Philip coaches at, Philip will be coaching his grandson and his son at the same time. Thus the beer stat of 2 being the second grandpa to ever play. And that is your Week 16 of the college football season. Week 15 of the NFL season. Breakdown. Going to be hard to keep up with this list, but from Parker & Sons Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, and Electrical, we have a reverse osmosis system, a tankless water heater, and 2 air scrubbers that actually remove pollens and germs from the air that we breathe in our home. So what does Parker & Sons do? They only handle the air that we breathe and the water that we drink, and they do a great job. Call 602-2-REPAIR. That's 602, the number 2, then REPAIR for Parker & Sons.
It's big, it's juicy, it's meaty. Get your burrito at Burrito Express. If you're having a hangover, a bad day, even a good day, still get your burrito at Burrito Express. It will make you feel better.
I am enjoying my A Mountain Amber Ale right now. It's I admit it's already beer number 2 because I started the show with beer number 1 on Beer Friday, thanks to 100 Mile Brewing Company, located in Tempe. And then when I heard that Howard Balzer was available, I thought, well, why don't we just crack open a beer and have number 2. Howard, how are you?
I don't have a beer cracked open, but I am doing well and hope you are too. And always good to have a nice chat with you about all things Cardinals and NFL and all that good stuff. And as we snap our fingers and say, is this really only 4 games left in the regular season?
Yeah.
Where did this season go? But I joke every year because it's like this every year. You know, you can't wait for the season to start, and as soon as it does, before you know it, it's almost over.
Well,
it's always pretty great.
The much more important first question is to ask of your family. How's the kids? How's your wife? How's life?
Family's good. Kids are good. And always, one of my sons just had a birthday a couple of weeks ago, so that was always nice. And so the family's good. And of course, I always love to give my one son back in St. Louis a call when it's 80 degrees here in December.
Oh, yeah.
And I say, well, what's the weather back there now? You were here and you left to go back. I mean, what is that all about? But in any event, yeah, family's good, and hope that yours is too.
Oh, that's nice of you. That's nice of you. So right now, if I go to CardsWire, what am I going to see?
Well, what you're going to see on CardsWire, besides the usual things, and this has been percolating in my mind for a couple of weeks now. And it kindly got to a head this week. I said, okay, I got to do something on this before we get to the end of the season and wonder if the axe is going to drop the day after or whatever it is. Because I always...
You're referring to Jonathan Gannon on Black Monday? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, exactly. Let's remember, Doug, no other teams in the NFL have bad games, right? So when you have a bad game against a team that right now is the number 1 seed in the NFC, and it's a team, by the way, a little number I'll throw out at you right now, a team that is number 1 in the NFL in point differential at plus 152 and beat Tampa Bay by 27 points a few weeks ago, beat Jacksonville, I believe it was by 28 a couple weeks before that, and has been dominating a lot of teams as they've won 7 of the last 8. But so anyone acts when you go out on the field with all the players that they're missing at all these positions, and your backup wide receiver, who is it? Jalen Brooks, Andre Bocelli. I mean, and you're playing with these backup running backs and backup offensive linemen, backup inside linebackers, and yet people are just shocked that you wouldn't play well against the Rams, and it's just kind of bizarre to me. So anyway, the idea has been percolating just to take a little different look at all of this. And so what I did is, and it's on Cards Wire, is I looked at the history of the Cardinals, and this goes back to their birth in 1920, and when the Bidwell family became owners in 1933, and how many times they've changed coaches over the years, how many times they've changed coaches when a coach has shown some progress with the team, but then has what I like to call a setback season, like Ken Wisenhunt had after Kurt Warner retired, and then Jim Hannafin had back in St. Louis, Don Coryell in St. Louis, Cliff Kingsbury after improving the team for a couple seasons, and then a bad year where, oh my goodness, 2022, there was so much ridiculousness that went on with that team. I don't think Vince Lombardi could have won more than 4 games with that team. And so I looked at that history and, the number of coaches that they've had. And, the one number that jumped out is that in the 38 seasons that the Cardinals have been in Arizona, they've had 12 head coaches. So if they make a change, if Michael Bidwell decides to make a change, that'll be 13 in 39 seasons. Is that the way to have any continuity in your organization? I mean, in their 28 St. Louis seasons, they also had 12 head coaches. And so that's the craziness to me, is that you run out of patience so quickly. And I went back and I wrote some things after Kingsbury was fired. I believed them then, and I believe them now. And so it's in a story on Cards Wire, going over some of those numbers, going over as I noted last week, right now with 10 losses, this is the 20th season in Arizona out of 38 that the Cardinals have had double-digit losses. And at what point do you say, is it always the coach, or is there something else that just creates this atmosphere or history of losing? And so I went into all that and basically, dug deep with some of the numbers and talked about, the thing. And then I also went into this year and how, like I said earlier, Doug, how people can look at it and say, well, yeah, they've had a lot of injuries, but all teams get injuries, right? Well, this team right now has had 25 players on injured reserve. Well, let's say on a reserved, some kind of reserve injury list, because there were several guys who opened the season on physically unable to perform. So 25 players on that list, 21 that have been placed on those reserve lists since the cut to 53. And when you start listing the names, you go, oh my goodness. Then there's another bunch of guys who haven't been on injured reserve that have still missed games because of injuries. And here's the last number I'll throw out before you can jump in and say a word, is that they've had 37 players miss games. And I'll give you the total games. Missed games during this season, a total of 245 games. Roll that one around in your mind for a minute. 245 games from 37 players. They've had 75 different players play games. And they've also had 64 different players. This is one thing I talked about a few weeks ago, is that people forget sometimes when you lose starters, backups move up to be starters, and those backups were playing a lot of special team snaps. Now all of a sudden you've got to make adjustments on special teams where they've had certainly some issues. They've had 64 different players play snaps on special teams this season. 64. So those are the things that I got into, to just have people maybe look at it with a little discernment and perspective and realize that when you have that much stuff going on, and something almost every week happens now with Paris Johnson not being able to play on Sunday. Think of this: on Wednesday, Doug, Paris Johnson didn't practice, Kelvin Beachum didn't practice, and Evan Brown, with a personal reason, didn't practice. That's 3 of your starting offensive linemen. I mean, how can you have a practice in your first one of the week getting ready for the next team, and you don't even have 3 of your starters on the offensive line out there to practice? I mean, their practice for the last month, they've had 10, 11 guys miss practices for a good part of the week. And so to me, when you have that much, it's almost impossible. You have good stretches during games, which they've had. But at the critical times in games, especially the close ones, at those critical times, third down, right, in the red zone, second half, fourth quarter, whatever, when the other team just comes up with the plays that you don't because they have better guys to make those plays.
Having said all that, would you fire Jonathan Gannon?
I would not. And I really wouldn't, because I would look at it this way. I would say you brought him and Monty Ossenfort in to an asset quote. And this is what we heard for the last 2 years, and even going into the season, how the culture has changed. They were very focused on bringing in the right kind of player to come and play. And these players play, I don't care what anybody says, these players play for Jonathan Gannon. And some people might not like what he says in press conferences, but that's all just to, you're not.
Admittedly, I don't like what he says in press conferences. I do admit that.
But a lot of times you get frustrated because it's the same thing. But what else are you going to say? But if you read between the lines, a lot of times you can see what he's trying to do. And I believe that for the first 2 years, they did a pretty good job of upgrading in a lot of areas and improving the depth and improving the starters. But when all that disappears and you lose your top 3 running backs and lose all players all throughout the roster and the revolving door they've had at cornerback during the season, getting 4 games out of Walter Nolan, the first round pick. When all of those things happen, you can have injuries here and there and overcome them. But when you have that many, to me, it's out of the control of the head coach. And I think, so it's easy to fire a coach. But then the hard thing, Doug, is to find another coach. You can find one, but is he going to be as good as or better in doing all those things that I believe that you can see what this group has done to try to improve? And so I don't know how much sometimes owners listen to all the loud noise, and I go into this a little bit in the story on social media. You'd hope that they don't all of a sudden get concerned. Oh my gosh, if I don't change the coach, no one's going to buy tickets and we're not going to get fans at the games and all those things. You hope that stuff isn't listened to. But let's remember, the owner made the decision at the combine, or earlier than this, in 2023 or 2022 rather, to extend the contract of Cliff Kingsbury through 2027 because he liked the job he had done to that point. And then you have a season from hell, in a lot of ways even worse than this one, and you win 4 games and Kyler Murray tears his ACL and the offensive line. I looked this up. DJ Humphries on the offensive line played 8 games. Justin Pugh played 5. I mean, Will Hernandez, missed 4 games. It was just awful. And yet when that finishes, okay, well, yeah, I know there were injuries stacked up on us, but I'm going to make a change, even though I thought it was the right thing to do to give him a contract extension. Something doesn't fit there. And so that's why I would say, hey, we've got to figure out a way to make this better. But the way to make it better is to somehow find health. And that's one thing to me that has been really, if you look at it, consistent over a bunch of these last seasons, is how they're not able to stay healthy. It's hard to say why. Some people say, well, strength and conditioning coach. Whatever it is, they just have a lot of weird stuff happen to them. And I just wonder if it's just the karma of this entire organization.
I'm leading somewhere, but I will ask this question as the lead question, which you will have zero idea why I'm bringing this up. But as a Hall of Fame voter, I don't know if you're allowed to reveal your vote, or I know you can't reveal anybody else's, but I don't know if you're allowed to reveal your vote or if you can tell us a little bit about conversations. But does Jerry Jones belong in the Hall of Fame?
I questioned it, and I think on one level he does because of what he meant to the league, and he kind of brought a lot of other owners and teams into the business world of the NFL, like the Bengals and others who just sailed around doing things the way they wanted. So he kind of brought a lot of teams into it was the 20th century when he took over as owner, and then he kind of brought him into the 21st century. So from that level, you could make the argument. However, and I was on the contributors committee, Doug, when he was being considered for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I'll tell this little story. There's 5 of us sitting in a little conference room at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, and they have a TV screen up there, and we are considering, I believe it was down to about 10 players, or not 10 players, but 10 contributors, whether it's owners, GMs, whatever it might be. And so we cut those votes to 3. And now we're deciding on who the final 2 is going to be, right? And it was Jerry Jones, Paul Tagliabue, and Pat Bowlen of the Denver Broncos. And I was a Bowlen guy, much more than Jerry Jones, because he was one of those owners that didn't have to be the story, didn't have to be the face of the franchise, wasn't the guy doing 3 radio shows a week and all those things, and had a history of winning with that organization. And so it comes to the discussion of Jerry Jones, and they put up on the screen, this little TV screen, his name and a picture and his title. And it says owner and general manager. And I made the comment in the discussion that if we were considering Jerry Jones on the basis of being a general manager, he would not even be discussed in this room. And I thought that was enough to at least not put him in the Hall of Fame ahead of Pat Bowlen. Well, I lost that argument. Pat Bowlen eventually got in, and Jerry Jones got in that year. And so, but I can't, overlook the business things he did for the league. Although it's hard for me to say that, because on one level, heck, I was in St. Louis when the Rams moved back to Los Angeles, and Jerry Jones was a big part of the whole deal for the owners not to accept the recommendation of the committee that recommended that they have the Raiders and the the Raiders and the Chargers be in Los Angeles and not the Rams. The committee voted for that. And that's the way it was leaning when that meeting started in January of 2016. And Jerry Jones was one of the ones who got it the other way. And let me tell you something, Doug. One of the reasons was he owns this company called Legends, and it does a lot of stuff with memorabilia and merchandise and all kinds of things. And it's a separate company. Well, guess what? He had the deal for Stan Kroenke and the Rams to use his company if they were going to be in Los Angeles. So, but I still say on some levels, I can understand why he's in, but I also believe a big reason why they haven't had success after the first few years there with Jimmy Johnson is because a lot of the other issues that, and maybe the same bad karma to a degree that affects the Cardinals, affects the Cowboys because of the way he runs things and the way that it occurs, with different decisions and things like that with that organization.
Here's why I ask. And my answer is no, he doesn't, because I think he's average for exactly why you said. He's the greatest business owner in the history of the league, but he's an idiot for not firing his general manager at some point. And therefore, he gets an A and an F, and therefore those two things balance out to a C. So to me, he's average. So I bring up that question for this reason. Last Sunday on my hit on 12 News, I said it's rude for any American to demand another American to sell anything. I don't think you have a right, Howard, to call me up and say I have to sell my car just because you don't think I should have it. That's ridiculous. However, just like we evaluate players and officials and managers and general managers and coaches, we can evaluate owners, and it's clear to me Michael Bidwill is a failure as a president and CEO or whatever hierarchy status he wants to give himself within the organization. So I am not calling out Michael Bidwill to sell the team. I think that's just rude. That's not my place. But I am calling him out as you have failed too long as the person that runs the franchise. And therefore, hire a president that's not just in charge of business, that's in charge of everything, and get out of the way. Now, you and I both know it's a pipe dream. I'm not acting like it'll really happen, but I'm saying that's the way through. That's the way to advance the organization. And that's why I asked that question about Jerry Jones, because we know Jerry's not going to fire himself, but look at the results. Look at the lack of playoff wins in Dallas and look at the similar situation. And I also said, yes, Michael Bidwill deserves credit for getting the team to the Super Bowl. He does. You were the owner. You got the stadium built. You hired the right people. But if you're allowed to just live on those laurels for this long, then why isn't Ken Wisenhunt still the head coach and Rod Graves still the general manager? You know, you made decisions to make changes from that Super Bowl team. So back to the original point, I've moved away from defending Jonathan Gannon. I think there have been enough mistakes, enough decisions that have nothing to do with personnel, even though, you know, in one way, everything has to do with personnel, that I just say that's not right. That's not a winning decision. However, I would keep him because I think he's a better coach than whoever Michael is going to hire again, because who does he hire? He always hires rookie head coaches, so he can either not pay them as much or he can control them. So whoever he's going to go hire, to me, is not as good as Jonathan Gannon. I can't defend Jonathan Gannon anymore, but I don't trust Michael Bidwill to hire the correct replacement.
And that was what I was getting at when I said, do people have confidence that he would do that? And I again would argue that a certain amount of it, I think at times he's hired pretty good people, but then he doesn't really give them that chance. And you mentioned Wisenhunt. I mean, they don't get to that Super Bowl without Kurt Warner.
Correct.
So then he gets them to the Super Bowl and then the playoffs and retires. And then what happens in those next 3 seasons? Well, maybe he was given a little longer leash than other guys who who only had one setback season, which I call it. They basically had 3.
They did. Remember, they had a 6-game losing streak for 3 straight years.
So Warner retires. So maybe he was given a little longer leash. But I went over this, and I don't want to get Cardinal fans all upset when I go down this list of quarterbacks that started games for the final 3 seasons of Ken Wisenhunt, Derek Anderson, John Skelton, and Max Hall in 2010, Kevin Cobb and Skelton in 2011, and then Cobb, Skelton, Ryan Lindley, and Brian Hoyer in 2012. I asked people out there, tell me any coach in football that would have won games with those quarterbacks. Now, granted, he lucked out because Bruce Arians came in after that and brought in Carson Palmer, and all of a sudden they were able to win. And so, but you make a lot of, excellent points, but I would argue a lot of it is you don't have the patience after that is that a little bit of adversity, and you say, "Oh, got to make a change. It's time for a change." That's the word. I don't know how many times an owner has said in this organization, and it's happened before. The irony, Doug, is that you were asking about the Hall of Fame with Jerry Jones. His grandfather, Charles Bidwill, who became the owner in 1933, is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, obviously, I wasn't voting back when he got elected.
That was my next question. How did you know? What were those discussions like?
I don't know what his credentials were to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because it wasn't exactly great football, and he was only the owner, I think, for like 13 or 14 years before he passed. And then they go to St. Louis after Charles's wife takes over, and then Bill is a co-owner with his brother Stormy, who owned Arlington Racetrack, by the way, in Chicago. You probably knew that. And then they didn't get along because Stormy was one of these bon vivant personality character type guys, and Bill is the exact opposite personality. And so Bill bought him out. And the crazy part, Doug, is that in Arizona, with those 20, at least 10 lost seasons, it's been better under Michael than it was under his father. But it's still not very good.
Mm-hmm.
But the funny thing is, what did he do a few years ago? And I wrote this actually a few years ago. The 2022 season began with him inducting his dad in the Ring of Honor. And I thought, what did he do to deserve that, besides being his father and being the owner of the Cardinals, for not a lot of success, right? And so once that happened, that season went to hell. And granted, there was stuff that happened in the off season before that, but he probably decided. So you wonder, is there that karma, like I believe there could be with Jerry Jones? As a general manager, Doug, Jerry Jones, they've had pretty good talent a lot of years with the Cowboys. They've had some more successful seasons than the Cardinals. But I also think that, to me,
and then
it's
they
not
trade that talent to the Packers.
Well, yeah, that's true this year. He did that. But the thing I was going to say is that I don't know that that's a good atmosphere on the team, where your quarterback's not the face of the franchise, your head coach isn't the face of the franchise, it's the owner that's the face of the franchise. And I don't believe that that's a positive. Now, that's different than what's happening here, but like I said, the lack of patience, at some point you have to accept a certain amount, whatever word you want to call it, failure, adversity, whatever you want. You have to say, okay, this is the NFL. That's going to happen. Right. Mm-hmm. But let's find a way to get back from it and not have to change everything again. Right. And that's what happens, obviously, when you change coaches, and the teams that consistently change, for the most part, don't change their fortunes. And that's kind of the reality of it. I mean, this is a hard league. And I think a lot of times fans, they don't realize how hard it is to win. Sometimes I wonder, do the fans pay attention to the rest of the NFL aside from the team that they're fervently rooting for? I mean, look at the Kansas City Chiefs, right? I mean, they're probably not going to be in the playoffs. They won 15 games last season, and now they have 6 with 4 to go. And a lot of their problems, Doug, is similar to the Cardinals. And in one respect, is that last year the Chiefs were 11-0 in one-score games. This year they're 0-6. So what's changed? Well, they've had a bunch of injuries in the offensive line, and you could see that decimation how it affected them in the Super Bowl. And now it's carried into this season with guys they've won. They drafted a guy in the first round who was playing very well, Josh Simmons, a rookie. Then he was gone a month for personal reasons. Then he came back, and a couple of weeks after coming back, injured his knee, and he's done for the year. And they don't have tackles, and Patrick Mahomes is running around the field like a chicken without his head. And all of a sudden they're losing closely contested, tough games, which is what the Cardinals have done for 7 of their losses by 4 points or less. So that just shows how competitive, how close the NFL is. And I don't disagree that there's always decisions you can question, but even the best coaches get questioned at times. Well, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? But if you have the personnel and you have those players capable of making big plays at the right time to help you win a game, whether it's on offense or defense, when you have those guys, you can overcome them. When you don't, most of the time, you're not. And so that's essentially, my take on that whole discussion.
Is there anything going right for the Cardinals as it leads to 2026?
Well, there are. I think they have developed a lot of these good players. I mean, I heard a discussion on one of the stations this week. They decided to go in and look at the 2024 draft and how that's been a bust for this team. Well, I'll tell you, when you look at that draft and you see the number of games guys have missed last season as rookies and then this year, I mean, it's crazy. So how can you really judge? And so, Darius Robinson, I mean, look at the games he's missed. But I think they found a lot of, pretty good young players, and they're starting to develop them. It still is generally a very young roster. And so so I think there are some good things that you can continue to build with, but mostly it's about at least keeping your team somewhat together and being able to plan each week, for guys. Is this guy going to play or is he not? We don't know. I mean, heck, last week, all of a sudden, Evan Brown, and we don't know why. I know someone put it out there that he put on Instagram, I think, back in the summer that he and his wife were expecting a child near the end of the year. So that's a speculation of what was going on when all of a sudden he was added to the injury report on Saturday with a personal reason and then didn't play.
Mm-hmm.
And so they put John Gaines II in there at left guard. And so when you have those changes and you've been planning for something else, Jonathan, how many times have you heard Jonathan Gannon say, well, players know their roles might change. Their roles might change in a week. They might change on Friday. It might change on Saturday. Well, yeah, he's right. The roles do change. But you don't just snap your fingers. And as I've always said, Doug, there's reasons certain guys are backups. And there's reasons certain guys are starters. And when you're missing, they've had 7 guys start all 13 games. 7. That's it this season. And so anyway, to answer your question, there is I think a foundation of good that has to be continued to be built on. But then you have to find a way to figure out. I don't know if there is a way to figure it out. You have to have some luck and keep those guys on the field and have some continuity from week to week. Heck, here's a Colts team, right? That was they were the
11-1, I think.
Well, I don't think it was 11. No,
or 8-1. 8-1. 8-1.
Yeah, it was either 7-1 or 8-1. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, this has happened and that's happened, and then Daniel Jones gets hurt, and now they're. I thought when you started to ask about the Hall of Fame, I thought you were going to ask me about Phillip Rivers.
Oh, yeah.
And here they are, going back in time to 5 years ago when Phillip Rivers played what he thought was going to be.
Oh, you know what? I've
game.
got to interrupt you because you just brought up a question a Hall of Fame question that I bet you don't even know, because there can't be. Maybe you do know that. Now that I start thinking about it, maybe I just answered my own question, but. Is there any clause in your Hall of Fame eligibility for being on a practice squad? Does Phillip Rivers, can he be on the roster? Does he have to take a snap? Like, what's the rule that resets the clock?
Here it is. And if he's only on the practice squad and is a mentor or whatever you want to call it, and he can be on the sideline for the game and, getting ahead of the quarterback who's playing, if he's only on the practice squad, And let me point out that he is a semifinalist right now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because this is his first year of Hall of Fame eligibility.
Yeah.
So if he's only on the practice squad, then his clock continues. However, he doesn't have to play a snap as long as when he becomes active for a game, his clock resets.
Oh my gosh!
All he has to do is be active. And I give him all the respect in the world because I'm sure, I would guess he knew that. He was asked about that today, he was asked about that on Wednesday in his press conference. And he said, that didn't even enter my mind, the Hall of Fame. It didn't even enter my mind. This was an opportunity. I thought I can help. It was obviously a team he was with in 2020, and Shane Steichen, who he had been together with prior to that with the Chargers. He knows the offense, and he still got it. He still feels that he can play.
Do you know? Did you hear the story of why he knows the offense?
Well, he knows it from the Chargers.
From the Chargers, but he uses it in his high school. That's so amazing.
Yeah, he uses it. He's coaching in Fairhope, Alabama. He's been coaching at high school with his son in Alabama.
Why couldn't we have gotten so lucky, Howard, to have this all happen next year? For the first time in history, somebody's bust travels with them during their playing career. The Colts could have had C. Phillips' bust as he could rub his own head on his way out onto the field. Why didn't we have that joy? Come on, Howard.
That would have been tremendous. I will say this. I don't know if he would have been. In fact, my gut is it wouldn't have happened this year if it all just went forward without all this happening. I don't think he would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer when you have Drew Brees. Now, I would put him in Drew Brees' class. Mm-hmm. I mean, I say he was every bit, and maybe I would argue at some point that maybe he was better than Drew Brees. He doesn't have that Super Bowl ring, which Drew Brees has, but Drew Brees has one. Does that all of a sudden say that this guy was head and shoulders above another guy who never missed a start, played in an AFC championship game 6 days after suffering a torn ACL? I mean, this guy was just blood and guts and passion and love for the game. And the great story was when the Chargers moved to L.A., and he didn't want to move his family. He's got like 10 kids.
Mm-hmm.
I think at that time he only had 7, right? Well, he didn't want to move to L.A., so he got this limousine or van or whatever it was tricked up, so where he traveled each day 2 hours to L.A. in the morning and then 2 hours back after practice and all that, and could watch tape and do all those things while he wasn't driving and while he was traveling back and forth. He did that. I don't remember how many years it was, but I think it was for a few seasons, that he did that. So in any of that, but I don't think he would have been going in this year. I mentioned Breeze, Larry Fitzgerald's a first-time eligible. Other guys, there's a lot of guys coming back who are very deserving. But so I'm not sure he would have gone in to have, what you suggested. It would have been cool if it did.
Well, there's another reason why this makes it so cool. Because I would vote for him in. Like, for me, he's first ballot, but you're right. I realize there's limits on how many people get in, and there's a great class coming in. But that would also make this, I guarantee it, even though I don't have historical basis to say this, I'm going to say it anyway, because you can't tell me that it's happened. It's got to be the first time in NFL history that a quarterback and his backup both go into the Hall of Fame in the same year.
Yeah, that would have been that is true.
Because remember, it was Drew Brees. They were done with him, and it was a contract holdout of Phillip Rivers that even allowed Brees to get back on the field with the Chargers, and they never expected him to be that good. Then he's almost signed by the Dolphins. Nick Saban still blames the doctors, and then the Saints win the Super Bowl. But that was Phillip Rivers was supposed to be the starter. Brees was supposed to be the backup, and it flipped, and they could have gone into the Hall of Fame in the same year.
Exactly. And then the other aspect of it is Eli Manning, who
that's true
was a first ballot guy last year and didn't make the cut to 10, much less the cut to 7. And I think Phillip Rivers, head and shoulders, was a better quarterback than Eli Manning. But Eli Manning, of course, was drafted by the Chargers,
right?
And he was refusing to play there. Rivers then was drafted by the Giants, and then they traded them. They swapped their quarterbacks, and there were other draft picks involved in that deal. And by the way, the other quarterback selected in that draft,
Big Ben,
was Ben Roethlisberger, yes, who becomes eligible next year.
Oh yeah,
for the Hall of Fame. But here's the thing: once Phillip Rivers, in terms of the clock resetting, I mean, here's a guy who's 44 years old, turned 44 years old this past Monday. Well, with the clock resetting, which it likely will do, because it's hard for me to believe he's not going to be active for a game. And that also includes, by the way, even if he's elevated from the practice squad.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be signed to the active roster. If you're elevated, you're active for the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then your clock resets. When he'll be almost 50 when he becomes eligible for the first time, which, of course, Tom Brady will be also.
Yeah.
But his clock resets to 2031 when he becomes first-time eligible for essentially for the second time. And I doubt that he'll be playing in 5 years.
That's good stuff. This was great. Last question, since the game's coming up in a couple days, let's actually talk about the game and taking on Houston. I don't know how much of a study you've already done in them, but why are they the best defensive team? I can look at stats, so I don't need you to tell me the stats, but what are you seeing, and just how impossible is it going to be for a team that can't run the ball to actually score against that defense?
That's the big question, obviously. And in terms of the Texans, they've been very good defensively since DeMeco Ryans got there. This year it's taken it up a notch. Obviously, the pass rushers that they have with Will Anderson Jr., who was drafted the same year as Paris Johnson, and then Danielle. I'm blanking on his last name. The other pass rusher that they have. They both have more than, I think they've combined for 21 and a half sacks. So they have that pressure. They're excellent against the run, and they're just a very disciplined, consistent defensive team. And DeMeco Ryans, Danielle Hunter, DeMeco Ryans' fingerprints obviously are all over this defense. And I'm glad you brought up. I'll try to be real quick with this. The whole thing with I'm amazed at the questions that keep getting asked of Jonathan Gannon. Well, why why is there imbalance in the offense, and why is there this? And Jonathan Gannon says, well, we have to throw the ball when we fall behind. Well, they have imbalance even in close games. When the last 5 games, Doug, they've had 225 called pass plays and 70 called runs. I mean, that's just a crazy consistent percentage, and it's been essentially that in the 2 close games they've had in this 5-game stretch with Jacksonville and Tampa Bay. And at the end of the first half last week, when before the Rams' final drive of the first half that made the score 24-10, it was still a close game at 17-10. But even in the first half, the Cardinals, I believe, they had 22 called pass plays and 6 runs in the first half. And so a good part of that is they don't run well, obviously, and it's not just the offensive line, but the defense basically knows almost every play is known pass, and they get the pressure on Jacoby Brissett like all these teams have, because the one thing is, and Bam Knight will get some yards here and there, but the defense isn't worried about him or Michael Carter. They're not worried about one of those 2 guys breaking a 30 or 40-yard run. They're not worried about that. So they can just go after the pass. And that's been a big part of what's happened in these games. And then when you're close, I mean, what the heck? I mean, even in a close game, you better make it work with the pass, because whether it's red zone, whether it's third down, whatever it might be, you're going to have some issues. And that's been a big part of it this year, and especially when you don't have your top 3 running backs. To me, I'll say this for the last thing. It's amazing to me that they've been as competitive and as close as they have been in a lot of the games against real good teams, against Jacksonville, against Tampa. Well, maybe Tampa's not real good, but they're still over 500. The first 2 games against Seattle and San Francisco, against the Colts, against the Packers. I mean, they were all close games that they had the opportunity to either stop a team late to win or to do something on offense to help you win. But once again, as I mentioned earlier, they haven't had those key plays at key times to be able to win. And in the NFL, where the margins are so small, I mean, heck, you're 0-7. If you're just 3-4 in those 1-score games, all of a sudden, what are you? You're 6-7 right now. Not where you wanted to be, but no one's talking about what a crisis and what a disaster.
When you mentioned Anderson and Hunter, I cheated and looked it up because I've heard the stat with them having 2 different guys having double-digit sack totals, which is incredible. But then the stats are now sitting in front of me, and you would have to do a historical deep dive on this. But I don't know a lot of cornerbacks that get double-digit tackles for loss. Kamari Lassiter is at 7 as a corner. TFLs for a corner. That just sounds absurd to me. He's got more tackles for loss than Sheldon Rankins, the 3 technique.
and he's probably running, he's coming up, and he's, a lot of preparation, the teams you play.
Yeah.
What kind of running games do they have? And Sheldon Rankins, he's being single team, maybe double teamed at times, and that's hard to get tackles in there. But a corner, whoever it might be, coming off the edge or reading that run and getting into that position to drop a guy for a 1 or 2 yard loss, that's good football, and that's good defense, and that's what D'Amico Ryan's coaches. But they have those situations. They weren't that good earlier in the season, right?
Right.
They were struggling, and everyone was wondering, is this going to be kind of a disappointment like it was last year, as opposed to C.J. Stroud's first year? Well, now all of a sudden they rolled off, I think it's 5 in a row, and they're right there in the playoff hunt. And isn't it interesting, Doug, what everyone said before the season, that the good thing for the Cardinals and other teams in the division.
I said it.
We all said it. I said it too.
Yeah.
They're playing the NFC South and the AFC South. Well, in the NFC South, Carolina is a lot better than people thought. The other 2, not so much. But the AFC South, with the Colts, with the Texans, with the Jaguars, I mean, those are three pretty good teams right now. Although the Colts, even they could. I don't know if Phillip Rivers is going to help them win games, because if you look at that gauntlet they have in the last four games of the season, even if they had Daniel Jones, they'd be healthy Daniel Jones. They'd be hard pressed to win those games, but they still had a nice season. So that AFC South obviously has been a whole lot better than most people thought they would be.
Steelers won last weekend, but I tweeted out before they won that the apocalypse is here, because the AFC South has 3 above 500 teams and the AFC North has none.
Yep, that says a lot, obviously.
Yeah,
and
I mean, the Steelers have a -3 point differential and they're in first place.
Well, you know what, the Bears? How about this? The Bears were the number 1 seed until losing to the Packers last week, and they're still sitting there though at 9-4. They're -1.
Yeah.
In point differential, and they've won a bunch of close games. I mean, that's the story of the NFL. And by the way, the NFC West, even with the Cardinals at 3-10, most wins of any division in football with 32. The NFC North has 31. Well, I guess you can call it 31.5, because you got the Packers tie in there. But right now, those are the 2 divisions with the best overall records.
Hey, this was great. Thanks for all the time, and have a great weekend. And just think of 100 Mile Brewing Company when you get your next beer.
I've got to think of that, and every time I see your smiling face there saying, "Hey, come on over and join me for a beer," one of these days I got to do that. And sometimes maybe let me know in advance what you are, and I'll try to break away from the mansion in Chandler.
That's awesome. Great to talk to you, Howard. Thank you.
Take care, Doug.
Here is Sue Rigler on starting 100 Mile Brewing Company.
The name 100 Mile Brewing Company, it's where you keep your beer freshest from production. So we have a 10-barrel brewing system, and I don't want the beer to travel any more than a radius of 100 miles outside of where we produce it here in Tempe, Arizona. And I'm also a runner. I've been running 45 years, so 100 miles has a play on that as well. The food, we have a full restaurant. It's elevated food for a brewery, and a local media has named us as the top 10 places to eat in Tempe, Arizona. I've heard more than once from people that they say they dream about our burgers. So that's kind of I wouldn't dream about a burger, but okay. So if you are in the Unplugged Army, we need to be friends. There's thousands and thousands of you that I cannot wait to meet. So this is your spot. Doug's favorite beer. He likes a lot of them, but the favorite one is the A Mountain Amber Ale. So why don't you all come in? I invite you in. Ask for Sue, ask for Todd, and we'll take really good care of you.
Hi, I'm Angie with Penny Royal Promotions. We decorate blank apparel, screen printing, embroidery, direct to film. Also, we provide promotional products, offset printing, tents, canopies, banners, business cards, anything you can put a logo on. Okay, Unplugged Army, if you own a business, you have an upcoming event, a charity function, golf tournament, we're the official provider of the Unplugged Army. Ask for Angie. I'm this year's Euchre champion.
Come check us out at Goodyear Fit Body Boot Camp. We're on Estrella Parkway, just south of the 10. My name is Aaron. I also go by AG Kleino on Twitter. I've been in the Unplugged Army since the dark days. One of the reasons I left my corporate job was I felt inspired by the way Doug shifted to it in a different direction after leaving the station. And my message to the listeners would just be, as far as Goodyear Fit Body Boot Camp is concerned, is it's not selfish to care for yourself. At Goodyear Fit Body Boot Camp, we strive to inspire fitness and change lives every day.
How about that Phillip Rivers stuff from Breakdown? Come on. That's crazy. Still amazing to me to have had my paths cross with Phillip Rivers. If you went up to Phillip Rivers and said, "Do you remember Doug Franz?" I'm 99% sure he would say no. But if you went up to him and said, "Hey, do you remember Doug Franz, the guy that started sports talk radio in Huntsville, Alabama, when you were a high school quarterback, I guarantee you he would say, oh, yeah, the guy that said I should not go to NC State and play quarterback because I'll never make it as a quarterback, and I should, and then you'll go, yeah, that's him. Yes, I said that. My worst opinion ever was Phillip Rivers, you're never going to make it. Just take the safety scholarship that Auburn's offering you, play safety at Auburn, and be happy. But you're not going to make it with that throwing motion in college football. Now he's a grandpa. And then how about the crazy stat that he could be coaching his grandson and his son in the same game, as his son Andrew will be, I think he's 18 months older than his grandson, who I don't know his name. That's just, wow. Let's get into some numbers. And then I'm going to talk UofA hoops after that. But when I say get into some numbers, just kind of flash through to talk ball a little bit about what's happening. I told you, like, if I look at the breakdown games as a good topic, I like to study a bunch of stats for each game that really helps me kind of absorb what's hot. Army rushing, hot. But what's weird about Army rushing is they just don't stop. Listen to this juxtaposition. They are fourth in rushing yards per game. Now, that's kind of normal, right? For service academies, they run the triple option to mitigate athleticism, and they've been doing it for years, and they are fourth best in rushing yards per game. They rush for 255 yards a game. Okay, so fourth. Keep that in mind. Rushing yards per game, fourth. Rushing yards per attempt, they're 62nd. 62nd. There's 135 teams, I think. I might be wrong, there's 136. But I think there's 135 teams in college football. So when you're 62nd, you're right into that area where you're barely above average. But they're fourth best in rushing yards per game. How can that be? Two things. Number one, they go for it on fourth down a lot. Army's 13th best in college football at converting 70% of their fourth downs. But they only convert 40% of their third downs. So they don't care about third down conversions because they're going for it on fourth down because they're getting 4 yards a carry, and eventually on fourth down, they'll get it. So it's kind of funny that way that they're very average every time they hand it off. They just don't stop handing it off. So that's going to be a big deal. And Navy is 133rd in stopping fourth down conversions. They've only stopped. They've allowed 75% of them, I think. That's kind of ugly. So that's entertaining to me to stare down. Navy is, remember I just told you Army's fourth in rushing yards per game. Navy's first in rushing yards per game. The difference is they get it every rush, unlike Army. They're third in rushing yards per attempt, but their passing yards per game is 131st. They rarely pass the ball. And I'm also entertained by the fact that Army is in first place in penalty yards 4, meaning they're the best in football at never really committing a penalty. They only have 23 yards that go against them in penalties. While both Navy and Army are two of the worst teams in football at getting you to commit a penalty. Army's 129th, Navy's 133rd. So if you heard me say this in breakdown, what's going to be the thing you need to know about this game is you better sit down quick because the game's going to be over. When you don't throw the ball very much, you don't have incomplete passes, so you don't stop the clock. Plus, you're going for it on fourth down a lot, so you're not going to have the clock stopping in order for the change of possessions. So you get a lot of long drives, but not a lot of points. So that means the game goes by very, very fast. That's the only college game to look at. Looking at the pro games, let's just make it easy and start with the Cardinals because that's going to be the one that you, I'm assuming, care about the most. And the numbers are pretty rough. Texans are the highest scoring offense in football. or excuse me, the number one scoring defense in football. I don't know why I said scoring offense. They allow only 16 points a game, while the Cardinals' offense is ranked 21st in scoring. That's ugly. And as you can imagine, if they give up the fewest points, they give up the fewest points in the fourth quarter, while the Cardinals score only 25th place in fourth quarter points. So only about 8 teams are worse than they are in the fourth quarter. They're number one in yards per game. Cardinals almost dead even, barely above average in 15th place. Now, the one thing that's impressive by the Cardinals is they're 9th in third down conversions, but they're going up against the Texans, who are 3rd place in third down conversions on defense. And the stat I love, team passer rating. That is what basically your quarterback, what's his passer rating? How good does he do? Well, the Texans' defensive passer rating, they're in first place. 100, anything 100 or above is really good. Anything in the mid 90s is good. Once you start getting below 90, it's a little creepy. But whatever you do, don't get below 80. You with me? Don't go below 80 on your quarterback rating. Don't go below 80. The Texans' defense of rating against a quarterback is 69.8. 80's bad, and they keep it down to 70. When I say 80's bad, it's bad for the offense. For a defense to keep your quarterback rating under a 70 on average is incredible. Just, I mean, somebody's got to be in first place. So being in first place in that stat isn't what's so huge. It's just how low it is. Now, the one thing that's interesting about the Texans' offense, they're in 30th place in first quarter points. So obviously, Vegas is going to know this. But it's still, you almost can't put the over-under, the first quarter total, low enough. With the Texans' defense and the Texans' offense being so bad, so good defensively and so bad offensively, and we know the Cardinals are just bad, you have to assume it's going to be 0-0 after the first quarter. So, or like 3-0 Texans. So keep an eye on that in this game. Also, the Texans are really good in turnover margin. They average getting you to turn it over once a game. And that's going to be a problem for the Cardinals that have been turning it over quite a bit lately. Let's see. Anything else that really grabs me? Not really. You know how incredible their defense is. Their offense is mostly above average. Cardinals aren't really good at anything. So yeah, that one's going to be ugly. Other games, the Packers-Broncos game will be amazing. Broncos defense is number one in rushing yards per attempt. You only average 3.7 rushing yards per carry. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on, is whether or not the Packers can establish the run. Plus, the Broncos are amazing at quarterback sack percentage. You might have heard me say in Breakdown, the Broncos might pass the 84 Bears for most sacks in a season. Broncos are number one in sacks right now, but the cool stat isn't just the total number of sacks, it's your quarterback sack percentage. So every time the quarterback drops back to actually pass, how often do you sack him? What's the percentage? And the Broncos are near 11%. So think about that. If you throw the ball 30 times, which is a number that almost everybody hits, then you're giving up 3 sacks every time you play the Broncos. And a sack can easily lead to turnovers. Plus, that's just the sack. That doesn't count how many times you got knocked over. And the Broncos are also the best red zone defense in the game, but the Packers are the second best red zone offense in the game. Here's the crazy one. Both the Packers offense, Broncos defense are both number one on third down. Packers convert 50% of all their third downs. Broncos only allow offenses to convert 31% of their first downs. So that's something to really keep an eye on, is who's winning the third down battle if you are watching that game. I hope you like this. I haven't done this in a while, where I just sit back and go, here's the big game. Here are the numbers to look at. Maybe it helps you if you gamble. Maybe it helps you if you just like to sit around and watch football on a Sunday. Lions, Rams, scoring. Lions are the number one scoring offense, and they're the only one in football that is over 30 points a game. But the Rams are in fourth place at barely less than them, 29.2. So both teams are right there at about 30 all the time. Their red zone offenses are stellar, but only the Rams' red zone defense is good. So that'll be something to keep an eye on for sure. The Rams' offense is number one in team passer rating. I love that stat. Love team passer rating. They're number one. Lions defense is number 19 in the defensive quarterback rating. So that's something to keep an eye on, that Matthew Stafford should be able to do more against the Lions than Jared Goff can do against the Rams. I think this is going to be a higher scoring game, but I think the Rams are going to win comfortably because I don't think the Lions defense is going to be good enough to do much about it. Lions are 23rd in red zone touchdown percentage defense. They're 26th in allowing almost a touchdown every first quarter. They're average in giving up 323 yards a game, but they are 22nd in passing yards per attempt. So you've got a Rams offense that's seventh best in passing yards per attempt and a Lions defense that's 22nd in that category. That I don't think that's good enough for this one. So I really like the Rams winning this game. Another game in breakdown was Titans 49ers. If you care about my stats, I like points per game, red zone attempts per game versus red zone touchdown percentage, first quarter points, fourth quarter points, yards per game, third and fourth down percentage, rushing yards per game and attempt, passing yards per game and attempt, quarterback sack percentage drop back, team passer rating, turnover margin, and penalty yards, okay? Not that you're supposed to remember any of that, but I just want you to know these are all the stats. Here is the Titans offense in those stats. Who cares if you don't remember? Just remember there are 32 teams in the NFL when I give you the Titans numbers. 31, 32, 22, 19, 27, 32, 32, 27, 31, 23, 31, 32, 29, 30, 25, 24. It's just like you think it's bad when you're bad. Oh, no. The Titans have monopolized bad. And I just can't rip them enough for what they did in firing Mike Vrabel. And that is a cautionary tale for any Cardinals fan that says you got to fire Jonathan Gannon. Now, Mike Vrabel had a track record. He got the Titans to the playoffs 3 times. He had, I think the Titans even had a number one overall seed with Ryan Tannehill one year, if I'm not mistaken. So you're in the playoffs 50% of the time, and the guy has a year and a half that was bad, and you get rid of him. And now they're back up as a potential number one seed. Last game to look at in breakdown. Colts and Seahawks. I cannot wait to watch this game. Who knows if Phillip Rivers is going to play, but I can't wait to watch this game. Seahawks defense probably third to the Broncos and the Rams in my head, the way I look at it. But the Seahawks rank second best in giving up the fewest points at 17.5. They're great in the first quarter. They're actually pretty below average in the fourth quarter, allowing a full touchdown, 6.8 points a game. Their second best defense in yards in third down conversions. This is defensively still. And they're second best in rushing yards per attempt and number one in passing yards per attempt. It's kind of crazy that in total defense, they're sixth. Yet, like I said, in yards per attempt, rushing and passing, they're second and first. That's a great number, how good the Seahawks are. Then offensively, they're the second best scoring offense in the league at 29.8, barely away from joining the Lions as the only teams that average over 30 points a game. And Sam Darnold, of all people, is leading the league in passing yards per attempt at 8.9. The reason why I like passing yards per attempt is think about an incomplete pass. That's a big fat 0. So you'll have multiple passes that are big zeros. Passing, I don't like yards per completion because, well, how many completions did you have? I don't know. But yards per attempt takes into the risk of the passes you didn't complete. So every time he even throws a pass, they get 9 yards. That's the average. You're doing some serious damage. And remember, that's a reclamation project in Sam Darnold. Seahawks are the 5 seed, and yet they're tied for the best record in the NFC. There's a little kind of a mini breakdown, but going deep into the numbers that I like to look at. You know how much I love college basketball, so the biggest college basketball game on the docket is U of A taking on Bama, not in Tuscaloosa, in Birmingham. But let me give you a little bit of a preview on that. Here's Tommy Lloyd talking about Bama and the fact that they never found a three-point shot they don't like.
Well, obviously they're comfortable shooting a lot of threes. Nate's done a great job at Alabama. I mean, they have a real identity and a real conviction to how they play. And if you have an identity and a conviction and it's well coached, you can almost win anyway. So obviously we know it's a great challenge for us, and we've got to do a good job defending the 3-point line. But usually when the 3-point line, you also get hurt by layups, and the combination of those two things together are kind of the backbreaker. So you got to play good all around defense. You can't just get fixated with one thing and feel like you did a good job protecting the 3-point line, but then they make a bunch of layups and free throws. That's also a recipe for a tough night.
He said Nate, the head coach of Alabama, was a high school coach in the Detroit area, I think. I know it was Michigan, but I can't remember specifically which city. And Bobby Hurley really liked him when he met him in recruiting some players from the Michigan area for the University of Buffalo, called UB up there. And so Bobby Hurley hired him. So Coach Nate was an assistant in Buffalo. Bobby leaves Buffalo after winning the MAC, knocking off my Bobcats in the semis, I think. And then Bobby came here, became the head coach of ASU. UB promotes Coach Nate. And then Nate Odom goes down to Alabama after that and has obviously done a lot better than Bobby in turning Alabama into a smaller power. I mean, they're perennially top 10 under Nate Odom. So this is a team. It's crazy how much they shoot. I've seen a lot of their games. A Bobcat named Mark Sears was their point guard for a couple of years. He spent 3 years at OU, and he was originally from Alabama, so I wasn't bent when he left and went back to Alabama because they didn't recruit him the first time and they did the second time. And so I would watch him, and the way Coach Nate is pumping the threes like crazy, it's weird to watch. So if you're a U of A fan and you're not familiar with Alabama, it's a little jarring how much they shoot. And the key is going to be never put your hands down when you're guarding your guy. There's a thing called like being 2 passes away. If you are guarding the ball or you're guarding someone that's 1 pass away, and what that term simply means is it's too risky to throw it to somebody that's 2 passes away without having a pit stop. So if I'm up top with the ball and you're in the corner, that's pretty risky for me to throw it all the way to the corner. It's easy for somebody to steal it. So I need to either pass it inside for a paint touch and have that guy pass it to you, or pass it around the perimeter one time and then have the next guy pass it to you for a safer pass. So if your guy that you're guarding is 2 passes away, you have got to have your eye on the ball. You have to. Because if you don't, then it's so easy for someone to pump fake that they're going to shoot the 20th 3-pointer in the last 4 seconds is what it feels like. that somebody buys a pump fake, boom, layup line, layup drills. So you've got to recover and block off that lane that your buddy just allowed his man to go right through you. But if you're only one pass away, you can't be sagging off and playing a lot of stare down ball where you're looking at the ball and you're off your man because you're worried about helping. Because if you're off your man, boom, one pass away, the pass is easy and the shot went up before you could get a hand and contest the shot. So it's really hard to both contest and keep Alabama out of the paint. So that's going to be something to watch if you're an ASU, or excuse me, if you're a U of A fan. Good question was, how do you keep your guys from falling into the trap of trying to outshoot Alabama? Sometimes Alabama hits a couple threes and the other team thinks, to say in this game, I've got to hit a couple threes. And then it becomes a track meet. You're playing Alabama's game. You can't compete. I love Tommy Lloyd's answer because I admit when the question was asked, I thought that's a good question. And Tommy Lloyd so comfortably makes it seem like it's not a good question because the answer is so simple. How do you make sure your players don't play Alabama basketball?
You have things you value and you have an identity. And you make sure you're honoring your values and you're honoring your identity. It's not much more complicated than that. We're going to play Arizona basketball. They're going to play Alabama basketball. Both styles can be really effective, and probably both teams are going to have to kind of figure it out over the course of the game.
We're going to do our thing, and our thing wins games. They're going to do their thing, and their thing wins games. So whoever executes their thing better than the other guy is the one that's going to win. Here I am thinking that's really good. Kids can really fall into the trap. They start shooting too much. And he goes, we value our things. Okay. Thanks. And then one more from Tommy Lloyd just to go local and be fun. And sorry, ASU fan, you don't want to hear this because you probably thought Koa Pete from Gilbert was going to be a devil. But here's what Tommy Lloyd has loved about Koa Pete as he's learned more and more about him after the first month and a half of the season.
I just think his understanding of, what it takes to be successful at this level and his understanding of what we're trying to do. There's a lot of superlatives you could say about Koa, and one of them is he has a really high basketball IQ and he's a great learner. So, he just continues to learn and, play the game the right way. And I think to me that's been the most impressive thing is just how consistently he plays the game the right way.
He's a freshman, but he has great prep and a high basketball IQ. Hello, NBA. What else do you want? And you can see it. Like if you know basketball and you're watching, you can see that young man's knowledge. So U of A fan, on the one hand, your game deserves a lot more than like an 8-minute breakdown, but preview. But at the same time, it's football show today and it's 5:31 in the morning and I need to get to bed so I can get ready for the big launch. Let's go. It's time for versus Lego. There could be some dancing, but I don't. Okay. There we go. I was kind of thinking I shouldn't dance because I went 3-2, so that's good. But everything had not everything. 3 games had negative juice. 2 games had positive juice. So we made money, but not that much. But one of the games we missed so bad that I almost feel like it shouldn't count. One of the games was just not fair. We had the Bucks -4.5 against Atlanta. 9 minutes to go. Bucks are up 14. 9:30 to go. They're up 14 points. And they lose. And that's why you heard. Did you like what I did in 4-minute offense with Todd Bowles? You know what? I'll end your Beer Friday thanks to 100 Mile Brewing Company. I'll end it today with Todd Bowles. I'll put Todd Bowles in at the end so you can hear it. It'll still be beeped out in case you have kids in the car, but it's hysterical. It's absolutely hysterical how mad he was. God bless him, too. I'm a fan. He won a Super Bowl with the Redskins, so I'm still a fan of his. Okay, So here's what we did. We went with Edmonton and Colorado to both cover the puck line of 1.5, and they did. Edmonton beat the Red Wings 4-1. Colorado beat Florida 6-2. So we got those two games right. The other game we got right, we kind of crushed it. I told you I did not like that line. I thought Iowa State would win, but no way by 12.5. We nailed that one. Iowa State a winner 66-62 over Iowa. But the two games we missed, one of them, the heartbreak of Atlanta coming back, and therefore they win 29-28 on a walk-off field goal, and Tampa Bay was supposed to cover by 4.5. But the one we really whiffed on, I have the Trailblazers minus 4.5. They didn't cover because they didn't win. New Orleans won by 23. 23! It's not as bad as my Sunday pick of Washington covering against Minnesota and then getting shut out. But boy, that was bad. But we still go 3-2. Only 3 games for the weekend. I was a little shocked, but there's no lines out. At least I couldn't find it for college basketball games on Saturday. I don't like any of the college basketball games today. Don't like any of the NBA games. I almost went with an NHL game I was planning on taking Chicago over St. Louis because St. Louis is at home tonight, but they just flew in from Nashville last night. But the problem, so I normally bet against you when you travel on a back-to-back. But I didn't go for this game because the Blues lost 7-2. Somehow when you lose 7-2, I bet you're so upset that you're gonna make sure you come out ready to go. So I would normally bet on that. So let's keep an eye on that game. If the Blues win, I'm going to go, woo! Glad I skipped that one. And if the Blackhawks just beat the snot out of them, I'm going to be so mad because my formula says bet on the Blackhawks, and I'm not playing by my formula. So here are my games. I think Navy's going to have an easy time with Army. They're going to cover the 6, so we'll take Navy. I think Navy's going to win by 14, 20 points, something like that. That's a little high scoring for an Army-Navy game. Maybe not that much, but really like Navy minus the 6. Bengals are a dog. I got plus 125 juice. I'm taking them to win on the money line at home against Baltimore. Always scary to bet in favor of the Bengals, but I think they're going to beat Baltimore. Most people disagree with me because of the Bengals' meltdown against the Bills last week, which means this game doesn't matter now, but it matters to Baltimore. But when healthy, I actually think the Bengals are a little better. They just haven't been healthy all year. And I love the 49ers just beating the Titans to shreds, just beating them to shreds. So we'll take the 49ers covering the 12.5. I've always been told never take a team that has to carry or that has to cover double digits in the NFL. Never. Because no matter how bad one NFL team is, it's just too hard to cover double figures. But I think whoever said that has never seen the Titans play. So I'm going to take the 49ers to cover the 12.5. Okay, events. Got a lot of stuff going on. Whirlwind Plus. If you haven't signed up, go to whirlwindgolf.com, become a Whirlwind Plus member. Just so many fun things that they do as a Whirlwind Plus member that you can be a part of. Every time I talk to General Mike, because he loves his Whirlwind Plus membership, and he lives nowhere near Whirlwind. It's a drive for him every time, but the deals are so good that why wouldn't you jump on it? For an example, coming up in January, they're going to have a 2-person scramble for only $99. That's total for both of you. Only one of you has to be a Whirlwind Plus member. So you and a buddy can play golf for $49 a piece and have a good time meeting 2 other people. Or you book a foursome and it's your cart versus their cart. How cool is that? And all of you are in for $50 a piece. It's a no-brainer. And then the 4th annual Unplugged Army holiday event coming up on December 20th. That should already be on your phone. It should already be in your calendar. You should be going to that. You should be inviting friends to go to that to welcome them into the Unplugged Army. And you can win a fabulous t-shirt from Penny Royal Promotions, the first issued Unplugged Army t-shirts. will be part of the giveaways under the tree. Bell's Nashville Kitchen, which is just off of Scottsdale Road on Main Street in Old Town Scottsdale. Can't wait to have you become part of that. And that does it for today's version. Oh, I haven't done sound credits. Oh boy, sound credits. I got the Buddha Baker and the Drew Petzing from azcardinals.com. I got the Kenny Dillingham from, I don't know what's going on with the Sun Devil Source microphones, but it was better on Devil's Digest. So I got Kenny Dillingham from Devil's Digest. And I got the Tommy Lloyd from the UofA YouTube page. Oh gosh, where did I get Todd Bowles? Where did I get the Todd Bowles from? Oh, I got it from Bleacher Report. Yeah! Came through in the clutch and I forgot to write that down. And that does it for today's version of Doug Franz Unplugged, presented by Whirlwind Golf Club at Wild Horse Pass. After my big lunch, I'm going to stop by Bell's to pick something up. I might get a beer there, and then I might go down and see McKenna, and we might go to 100 Mile Brew on a Beer Friday if you want to join me for either of those. And free plug out for Santan Ford, Parker & Sons Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Burrito Express, and Trophy.
Doug, thank you so much. My best to your listeners, and keep up the work on Doug Franz Unplugged.
It's inexcusable. You don't make excuses. You got to care enough where the shit hurts. You got to care enough where the shit hurts. It got to mean something to you. It's more than a job. It's your livelihood. How well do you know your job? How well can you do your job? Well, you can't sugarcoat. It was in the excusable, and there's no answer for it. There's no excuse for it. That's what you tell them in the locker room. Look in the